Hey guys, let me do this. Now I'm wanting to share a screen with you. So I'm going to say share screen. I got that, so I'm sharing my screen there. And I'm going to go over here. Here's something I want to share with you. It's called Rehydrate the Earth. It's a handy dandy Word document that I got. So Rehydrate the Earth is like my mission. It's my elevator speech. It's I have this document that quickly became like it's about 4,000 words now. I'm going to be talking through it. Just put it up here on the Word and we'll go from there. So rehydrate the earth. So what's the big idea? The big idea, if you ask Hart Hagen, rehydrating the earth will solve so many other problems. If we rehydrate the earth, that will solve 2/3 of the world's problems, in my view. 2/3 minimum, guaranteed. So what are we talking about here? So restoration of broken water cycles will go far to solve the following problems. So we've got about 14 problems here that restoring broken water cycles will solve these problems. And so number one, climate change. Restoring broken water cycles will go far to solve the problem of climate change. So how's that work? So climate change is a thing. So follow the arrow here. If we lower restoring water cycles will help lower carbon dioxide, because if you restore water cycles, ecosystems grow, plants start to take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the ground. And that will have the effect, if we do enough of it, that will have the effect of cooling the earth, because we deal with carbon. Next item up here, so we have climate change, that's the problem to be solved. Then if we can restore water cycles to lower the greenhouse effect. Because when you restore water cycles, you have lots of green plant matter, you have lots of water stored in the soil, then there's a lot of water being transpired from the plants and from the soil, and that has the effect of cooling the earth. That can actually lower the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is such that we have about 1% more energy coming in than going out. We can change that dramatically by lowering the surface temperatures, because the greenhouse effect is not all about greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are part of the greenhouse effect. Another part of the greenhouse effect is surface temperatures. So if we restore water cycles, we can lower surface temperatures and therefore have more energy, less energy coming in, more energy going out. Next item here is desertification. So desertification is a problem to be solved. If we restore water cycles, then we can reverse desertification. One way that happens is by proper management of grazing animals, because grazing animals graze on places that were historic grasslands. Not all of them, some of them used to be forest, and that's another story. But the areas that historically were grasslands can be revived as grasslands. Instead, what we have is just vast areas of the globe that used to be grasslands. They're in the process of desertification. So if we restore water cycles, we have many, many ways of restoring water cycles, and we'll talk through that. But if we restore the water cycles, then we can reverse desertification. That's a major problem to be solved. Next item here is biodiversity. So we have declining biodiversity. They're declining biodiversity. So we want to reverse that problem. We want biodiversity to go back up. Biodiversity means biological diversity. It means like how many animals, how many plants, how many microorganisms, how many fungi are in any given place in the ecosystem. The more diverse the ecosystem is, that's literally a measure of life itself. It's a measure of nature. If we want to know whether nature is working very well, then the measure of that is biodiversity. If we restore water cycles, we can restore ecosystems and thereby enhance biodiversity. Next item is, okay, ecosystems are in decline. If we restore water cycles, we can reverse that decline. Now, let's talk about increasing farm productivity. If we restore water cycles, imagine a farm that is in drought. When farms are experiencing drought, then your crops don't do very well and your livestock doesn't have very much food. A lot of that going on out west, in the American West. If we restore water cycles, then we can increase farm productivity, especially farms that do things right, especially regenerative farms require water cycles. So if we restore those water cycles, if we get the streams flowing again, then we can increase farm productivity. That's important. We don't want to not only feed people, but we want to produce healthy foods. We want to not only farm productivity is typically measured by yield of a commodity. We want to get away from that. We want to measure nutrition per acre, but that's another conversation. We want to increase food availability, same thing. Hunger exists all over the world. And a couple months ago, the headlines were saying there is a famine in Madagascar, and this is the first famine ever caused by climate change. By that, we're supposed to think CO2. We're going to ignore what they've done to the land, usually at the behest of American multinational corporations. We're going to ignore what they've done to the land. We're going to ignore land use. We're going to ignore bad land management. And we're going to say Madagascar is experiencing famine because of too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's nonsense. It's a factor, but it's a relatively minor factor. The major factor is land use. How are we using the land? And bad land use causes hunger. And we can reverse that by restoring water cycles and decrease hunger. Next item, poverty. So many people in the world are so poor, and it's not because a lot of it is because of empire. But we can change that by increasing the ecosystem function where they are. We can increase ecosystem function by restoring water cycles and thereby decrease poverty. Resource conflict. So, some people think war is inevitable. That's nonsense. But, so war is mainly caused by an empire. The empire is up here just kind of manipulating people, taking advantage of resource scarcity, taking advantage of ethnic tensions, taking advantage of, racial conflict and nationalism, that kind of thing. But mainly it's the empire causing anyway, even if the empire were out of the way, we would still have some conflict over resources, but you don't have conflict over resources when the resources are abundant. You have conflict over resources when the resources are scarce. So if we increase ecosystem function, then we can solve the problem of resource scarcity. Next item, local economies. Local economies are too weak. Local economies are there's too much, multinational corporations have too much, they occupy too much space in our economies. We can solve that problem to some extent just by deciding to produce locally and consume locally. We can do much of that, much more of that by restoring water cycles, restoring ecosystem function, making farms more productive. And agriculture is or can be the basis of a local economy. We can do that more effectively if we restore. We can have strong local economies if we restore water cycles and restore ecosystems. Lastly, small businesses are many more small businesses will be possible, whether you're talking about relatively wealthy America, which still has a lot of poor people, by the way, or if you're talking about a place where people typically, live on a few dollars a day. Places like that are going to, we need to revive the local farms and local businesses, the small businesses, by ecosystem function. Ecosystem function, which requires water cycles, that is a big part of real, actual wealth for people who are currently rather poor or very poor. We restore the ecosystem function, then we're going to provide a basis for people to grow food and earn a living. Okay, family farm, I've covered that. Family farms and local economies. Family farms, let's say family farms are struggling. We can solve that problem to some extent, to a great extent, by restoring water cycles, by decreasing drought, increasing farm productivity, increasing productivity of local farms. Lastly, not least of all, little political statement here, but I think, this is important. If you don't agree, that's fine, but this is where I'm coming from. Local economies, if we have strong farm economies, if restore water cycles, restore local ecosystems, increase farm productivity, increase the vim and vigor of local economies, then people will begin to take control of their own fate and be much less easily fooled by political charlatans, and then we will have more social stability. So in conclusion, let's restore our water cycles so we can solve 2/3 of the world's problems. That's about it. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to stop the share and then wrap up the recording. Okay, thank you.